The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 47 different species filled the curved seats that rose like waves around the central speaking platform. Their voices created a storm of sound as translators worked overtime to keep up with the panic. Ambassador Zira of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center platform. Her crystal body, normally a calm blue, now flickered between red and orange with stress patterns. The holographic display behind her showed images that made even the bravest council members look away. "The outer rim is gone," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. 3 entire star systems. Billions of lives. All consumed in less than a standard week. The display changed to show what remained of the Kelton system, where once 3 planets had orbited a yellow star. Now only twisted metal structures floated in space. They moved with purpose, like insects in a hive, constantly building and reshaping themselves. "The harvesters have awakened," Zira continued. "After 10,000 years of sleep, they are active again. And they are hungry." A rumble of fear went through the assembly. Every child in the galaxy knew the stories of the harvesters, ancient machines that ate worlds and turned everything they touched into more of themselves. Most had hoped they were just myths. General Korax of the United Defense Fleet stepped forward. His 6 arms gestured angrily as he spoke. "We sent our best ships, our most advanced weapons. The energy beams that can crack moons barely scratch their hulls. They adapted to our attacks in minutes. In minutes." The hologram showed battle footage. Sleek Council warships fired brilliant streams of plasma at the Dark Harvester constructs. The first few shots seemed to damage the enemy vessels. But then the Harvester hulls began to shift and change. Within moments, the same weapons that had hurt them before passed harmlessly through their armor. "They learn faster than we can adapt," Korax said. "Every tactic we try, they counter within hours. Every weapon we use becomes useless after the first engagement. We are fighting an enemy that becomes stronger every time we attack it." The chamber fell silent except for the quiet sobbing of the Altarian delegate. Her people had lost 2 colony worlds in the first wave of attacks. "What about evacuation?" asked someone from the back. "Can we move our populations to safer systems?" "There are no safer systems," Zira replied. "The harvesters are not just attacking randomly. They are following a pattern, consuming worlds in a specific order. Our analysts believe they are working their way toward the galactic core. Eventually, they will reach every inhabited world." The silence stretched longer. These were the most powerful beings in the galaxy, leaders of civilizations that spanned thousands of worlds. But faced with the harvesters, they felt helpless as children. Then an old voice spoke from near the back of the chamber. "There might be another option." All eyes turned to see Professor Alana, the ancient Altarian scholar. She was over 300 years old, which was elderly even for her long-lived species. Her wrinkled blue skin and clouded eyes spoke of decades spent in dusty archives. "Professor," the council speaker said gently, "perhaps you should rest. This crisis requires military solutions, not historical research." But Alana was already making her way to the central platform with slow, careful steps. "History is exactly what we need," she said. "I have spent my life studying the old records, the real archives from before the council was formed. And I have found references to something the founders wanted us to forget." She reached the platform and activated her own holographic display. Ancient text appeared in the air, written in languages so old that only a few scholars could read them. "During the last Harvester awakening 10,000 years ago, there was another species that fought them. A species from a world so dangerous that the mere act of living there made them into something the galaxy had never seen before." The text changed to show star charts and navigation data. They called their world Earth. It orbited a young, violent star in a system full of asteroids and comets. The planet itself was a nightmare of extreme weather, shifting continents and predators that could kill with ease. "Why are you telling us about extinct species?" General Korax demanded. "We need solutions, not history lessons." "Because they are not extinct," Alana said quietly. "When the council was formed 3,000 years ago, the founders decided that some species were too dangerous to contact. They put barriers around certain systems and marked them as forbidden zones. Sol system, where Earth is located, was the first one quarantined." A shocked murmur went through the assembly. The quarantine zones were known, but their contents were classified at the highest levels. Most council members had never been told what was hidden behind those barriers. You mean there are actual Deathworlders still alive? Asked the Meridian delegate, her voice barely a whisper. Alana nodded. The humans, as they call themselves, have been isolated for 3 millennia. The few probe reports we have suggest they have not only survived but thrived. They have spread to multiple worlds in their system and show no signs of the peaceful evolution that marks civilized species. This is madness, Korak said. Even if these humans still exist, what makes you think they would help us? And why would we want the aid of violent primitives? Because, Alana said, bringing up the final piece of data. The last time the Harvesters were defeated, humans were involved. The ancient records are unclear about the details, but they mention the warriors from the Death Planet playing a crucial role in the victory. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates called the idea impossible. Others worried about making contact with dangerous unknowns. A few suggested that even if humans could help, the cure might be worse than the disease. But as they argued, another message came through the emergency channels. The Nexus system, home to 2 billion beings, had gone silent. The Harvesters were moving faster than anyone had predicted. The council speaker called for order. "We will vote," he announced. "All in favor of sending an envoy to the Sol system to request aid from the humans?" The voting was close. 24 in favor, 23 against. By a single vote, the Galactic Council decided to contact the species they had spent 3,000 years avoiding. "Who will go?" the speaker asked. "This mission will require passing through the quarantine barriers. The automated systems will try to turn back or destroy any ship that approaches." Ambassador Kylex of the Meridian Collective stood up slowly. He was known for his diplomatic skills and his courage, but his face was pale as he spoke. "I will go. If these humans are truly as dangerous as the records suggest, it will take all my experience to convince them to help, rather than simply kill the messenger." As the assembly prepared to disperse, Professor Alana remained at the platform. She stared at the star charts showing the route to Sol system. Her old eyes filled with worry. "What have we done?" she whispered to herself. "We are about to unleash something that the galaxy's founders thought was too dangerous to exist alongside civilized species. If we survive the Harvesters, will we survive what comes after?" But there was no choice now. The message pods were already being prepared, carrying diplomatic credentials and pleas for help across the galaxy to the quarantine zone around a small yellow star. Soon, for the first time in 3,000 years, someone would knock on humanity's door, and the humans would have to decide whether the galaxy that had abandoned them was worth saving. Ambassador Kylex checked his ship's instruments for the 10th time as he approached the outer edge of Sol system. The warnings had been broadcasting for the last 3 hours, growing stronger as he moved deeper into the quarantine zone. Warning: dangerous species territory. Maintain minimum safe distance of 50 astronomical units. This species has been classified as apex predators with extreme territorial behavior. Approach at your own risk. The messages came in dozens of languages, some so old that his translator struggled to decode them. But the meaning was always the same. Stay away from the humans. His ship, the diplomatic vessel Harmony, was equipped with the best shields and fastest engines the Meridian Collective could build. But as asteroid fields gave way to organized patrol routes, Kylex realized that human technology might be more advanced than anyone had guessed. The first human ship appeared without warning. One moment his sensors showed empty space, the next a dark vessel twice the size of his own was matching his course and speed. No energy signature, no engine trail. It had simply appeared like a predator stepping out of shadows. "Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You are in restricted space. State your business or be destroyed." The voice was calm, almost bored. Kylex had expected threats or demands. But the human spoke like destroying his ship would be a minor inconvenience rather than an act of war. "This is Ambassador Kylex of the Meridian Collective. Representing the Galactic Council," he broadcast back. "I carry diplomatic credentials and an urgent message for your leadership." There was a long pause. "Galactic Council," the human repeated. "The same organization that locked us in this system 3,000 years ago?" "Yes," Kylex admitted. "We seek an audience to discuss a matter of galactic importance." Another pause, then, "Follow our escort ship. Any deviation from the prescribed course will result in immediate destruction. Any attempt to scan our installations will result in immediate destruction. Any aggressive action will result in immediate destruction. Are we clear?" "Perfectly clear," Kylex replied. though his hands were shaking as he spoke. The escort led him deeper into the system, past installations that made his diplomatic training feel inadequate. Massive space stations hung in orbit around every major planet, each one bristling with weapons that his scanners could not identify. Asteroid belts had been turned into fortress walls, and the larger moons showed signs of extensive mining and construction. But it was the traffic that truly impressed him. Thousands of ships moved through the system with military precision. Cargo haulers the size of cities, warships that looked like they were built for battles against impossible odds, and smaller craft that moved with the deadly grace of born hunters. "Your people have been busy during the quarantine," Kylek said when Admiral Chen's voice returned. "We do not waste time," she replied. "When you lock predators in a cage, they either die or they get stronger. Humanity chose to get stronger." The escort brought him to a station orbiting the third planet from the sun, Earth according to his charts, though the world below looked nothing like the primitive planet described in the old records. City lights covered entire continents, and orbital elevators stretched up to space stations that could house millions. The docking procedure was swift and efficient. Human security officers met him at the airlock, and Kylek got his first close look at the species that had been hidden from the galaxy for 3 millennia. They were smaller than he had expected, but there was something about the way they moved that set his instincts on edge. Every gesture was controlled, every glance calculated. These were beings who had learned to survive by being constantly ready for violence. Admiral Chen met him in the station's main conference room. She was a middle-aged human with gray streaks in her dark hair and scars on her hands that spoke of long experience with dangerous situations, but her eyes were what struck him most. They were intelligent, patient, and completely without fear. "Ambassador," she said, gesturing to a chair designed for non-human physiology, "I understand you have a request to make." Kylek activated his holographic display and began the presentation he had rehearsed during the long journey. Images of the harvester attacks, tactical analyses of their capabilities, and projections of how quickly they would consume the galaxy. Chen listened without interruption, occasionally asking technical questions about harvester weapons or movement patterns. Her staff, a mix of military officers and scientists, took notes and whispered among themselves in rapid human languages. When the presentation finished, the room fell silent. Kylek waited, unsure how to read human expressions. "So," Chen said finally, "let me understand this correctly. 3,000 years ago, your council decided we were too dangerous to associate with civilized species. You locked us away and forgot about us. Now you face an enemy you cannot defeat and you want our help." "Yes," Kylek said. "That is correct." Chen smiled, and Kylek realized that human smiles could be far more frightening than any alien threat display he had ever seen. "The irony is not lost on us," she continued. "But I have good news, Ambassador. Humanity has spent 3 millennia wondering when we would be allowed to leave this system and explore the galaxy. Your crisis provides us with that opportunity. Then you will help?" Kylek asked, hardly daring to believe it. "We will help," Chen confirmed. "But we do this our way, under our command structure, with our rules of engagement. Your council gave up the right to dictate terms when they chose isolation over cooperation." She stood and walked to the window that looked out at Earth. "You should understand what you are asking for, Ambassador. My species evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight predators that could tear us apart with their bare claws. We survived ice ages and volcanic winters and asteroid impacts that would have ended most civilizations. We learned that sometimes the only way to save what you love is to become more dangerous than the things that threaten it," she continued. "The galaxy may not like our methods, but they will be effective." Kylek felt a chill run down his spine. "What exactly are your methods?" Chen turned back to him and her smile was gone. Now she looked like what she truly was, a predator from a world of predators shaped by millions of years of violent evolution. "We will fight your harvesters, Ambassador. We will hunt them across the galaxy if necessary. We will use every weapon, every tactic, every advantage we can find or create, and we will not stop until they are completely destroyed. But," she added, "when this war is over, humanity will not return quietly to our cage. We will be part of the galaxy, whether your council likes it or not. You are not just asking for our help. You are asking us to take our place among the stars." Kylek realized that his mission had succeeded beyond his wildest hopes and fears. Humanity would help save the galaxy, but in doing so they would change it forever. As he prepared to leave with humanity's answer, Admiral Chen gave him one final message for the Council. "Tell them," she said, "that the humans are coming." The human fleet arrived at the Vega defensive line 3 days ahead of schedule. Admiral Chen's task force looked nothing like the sleek Council warships that had failed so badly against the Harvesters. The human vessels were angular, brutal things covered in armor plating and weapon clusters that belonged to an earlier era of galactic warfare. General Korax stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the humans take position with growing confusion. "Admiral Chen," he broadcast, "your fleet appears to be equipped with projectile weapons, kinetic energy systems, even primitive chemical explosives. These technologies were abandoned centuries ago." "Abandoned by you," Chen replied from her command ship, the Indomitable. "We kept improving them." Captain Vix of the Altarian Defense Corps studied the tactical displays with her 4 eyes. The human formations made no sense according to modern military doctrine. They were spread too wide with gaps that any competent enemy could exploit. "Admiral, your defensive positions seem vulnerable to breakthrough attacks." "We are not defending," Chen said simply. "We are hunting." Before anyone could ask what she meant, the human fleet began to move. But instead of taking defensive positions along the line where Council forces expected the next Harvester attack, they accelerated straight toward the enemy's last known position. "What are they doing?" Korax demanded of his tactical officer. "They are abandoning the defensive line." The answer came 6 hours later when human scouts made contact with a Harvester probe formation in the Sigma Draconis system. But instead of engaging cautiously and withdrawing to report, the scouts attacked immediately. The bridge of the Council command ship filled with shocked voices as the engagement data came through. 2 human fighters had attacked a formation of 12 Harvester constructs. The fighters were destroyed within minutes, but not before they had done something impossible. "They damaged them," Captain Vix whispered, staring at the sensor readings. "The Harvesters took damage and did not immediately adapt." Chen's voice came through the communication system with grim satisfaction. "Kinetic weapons are harder to adapt to than energy beams. A chunk of metal moving at 30% of light speed does not care how you reconfigure your armor. But the real shock came when the human fleet began what they called aggressive reconnaissance. Instead of probing the Harvester perimeter carefully, human units deliberately triggered engagements across a dozen systems simultaneously. Council observers watched in horror as entire human squadrons sacrificed themselves to gather 30 seconds of combat data. Pilots with failing life support systems rammed their ships into Harvester cores rather than retreat. Marines with severed limbs continued planting demolition charges until their suits ran out of medical foam. "This is madness," Korax transmitted to Chen. "You are throwing away lives for minimal tactical advantage." "No," Chen replied as she watched another squadron of fighters dive into a Harvester formation. "We are paying the price for knowledge. Every death teaches us something new about how they fight. Every sacrifice makes the next engagement more effective." The human approach to warfare horrified their allies, but it produced results. Within 12 hours of first contact, human engineers were dissecting Harvester wreckage and uploading tactical data to the entire fleet. The humans adapted to enemy tactics faster than any species the Council had ever seen. Then came the first major engagement at Proxima Station. The Harvesters arrived in force, their dark constructs moving in perfect coordination as they advanced on the station's defensive grid. Council forces took their usual positions, preparing for a fighting retreat that would buy time for civilian evacuation. But the humans did something that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Instead of defending the station, they used it as bait. "Admiral," Korax called urgently, "you need to move your ships to defensive positions around the station. There are 50,000 civilians aboard." "The civilians are already evacuated," Chen replied. "We emptied the station 6 hours ago. Then why are you not withdrawing?" "Because we are not running from them anymore." The human fleet had positioned itself not around the station, but scattered throughout the system in small groups that looked vulnerable to attack. When the Harvesters moved to engage what seemed like easy targets, they discovered too late that they had been divided and surrounded. Human tactics used the Harvesters' own coordination against them. When the enemy constructs moved to support each other, they found human ships waiting with weapons designed specifically to exploit the movement patterns observed in previous engagements. But it was the humans' willingness to take damage that truly shocked their allies. A council captain would retreat when his shields failed. A human captain would continue fighting with hull breaches, using his dying ship as a weapon to take out enemy formations. The battle turned when Commander Martinez of the Relentless demonstrated what humans called acceptable losses. His cruiser had taken critical damage and was venting atmosphere, but instead of withdrawing, he accelerated directly toward the largest harvester construct. Martinez, "Withdraw immediately," Chen ordered. "Your ship is compromised." "Negative, Admiral," Martinez replied, his voice calm despite the alarms blaring in the background. "I have a clean shot at their command node." Initiating ramming speed. The Relentless struck the harvester construct at full velocity, its nuclear reactors overloading on impact. The explosion destroyed both ships and sent shockwaves through the harvester formation that disrupted their coordination for precious minutes. In those minutes, the rest of the human fleet struck with surgical precision. When the smoke cleared, Proxima Station was gone, vaporized in the fighting, but so were the harvesters. For the first time since their awakening, an entire harvester formation had been completely destroyed. Council observers studied the battle records with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans had lost nearly 40% of their fleet, casualties that would have broken any civilized military force, but they celebrated the victory as if the losses were insignificant. "How do you accept such casualties?" Captain Vix asked Chen during the post-battle briefing. "Because we understand something you do not," Chen replied. "Sometimes the only way to save 1,000,000 lives is to sacrifice 1,000. Sometimes the only way to win a war is to be willing to pay any price necessary." She gestured to the tactical display showing harvester movements across the galaxy. "Your people fight to minimize losses. We fight to maximize damage to the enemy. You retreat when the situation becomes dangerous. We advance when the enemy thinks they have won. But most importantly," she continued, "you fight like civilized beings who believe in rules and limits. We fight like predators who understand that in a war for survival, there are no rules except victory or extinction." As reports came in of more human victories across the war front, General Corax realized that the galaxy had underestimated more than just human technology. They had underestimated what it meant to be a species that had learned to survive by becoming more dangerous than anything that threatened them. The harvesters had spent 10,000 years consuming civilized species that fought with restraint and precision. Now they faced something they had never encountered before: organized chaos wielded by beings who had turned violence into an art form. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the crisis began, the galaxy had hope. The humans were not just fighting the harvesters. They were winning. 3 months into the war, the galaxy learned that what they had seen was only the beginning of humanity's capabilities. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of the new Terran forward base, watching tactical displays that would have given council generals nightmares. "General Torres," she said to the man studying star charts beside her, "initiate Protocol 7. General Marcus Torres was a veteran of humanity's asteroid wars, conflicts that had raged in the outer Sol system long before first contact. His cybernetic left arm moved smoothly as he input commands, but his organic eye held the cold calculation of someone who had learned to fight in the vacuum of space. "Protocol 7 confirmed," he replied. "Stellar engineering teams are in position around the target star." Captain Vix, the Altarian observer assigned to the human command staff, looked up from her station in alarm. "Stellar engineering? What exactly are you planning to do?" Chen gestured to the display showing the Cygnus system, where harvester forces had established a major processing facility on the 4th planet. "The harvesters need energy to operate their conversion processes. We are going to remove their power source." "You cannot destroy a star," Vix protested. "The technology does not exist." "We are not destroying it," Torres corrected. "We are destabilizing it." There is a difference. The human plan unfolded over the next 72 hours with a precision that spoke of long preparation. Teams of specialized ships, each carrying equipment that pushed the boundaries of known physics, took positions around the target star. They worked with the casual efficiency of engineers performing routine maintenance, rather than beings attempting to manipulate the fundamental forces of nature. Council scientists watching the operation could barely comprehend what they were seeing. The humans had turned stellar dynamics into a weapon, using controlled magnetic field manipulation to trigger solar flares that would strip away the outer layers of nearby planets. "This is beyond dangerous," General Corax transmitted from his flagship. "If your calculations are wrong, you could cause a chain reaction that destroys multiple systems." "Our calculations are not wrong," Chen replied with the confidence of someone whose species had learned precision through necessity. "We have been planning this operation for 80 years. 80 years? Fix asked. "But you only learned about the harvesters 3 months ago." Torres smiled grimly. "We did not plan this for the harvesters specifically. We planned it for any enemy that might threaten our home system. Stellar engineering was always part of our defensive strategy." When the operation began, Council observers watched in fascination and terror as human technology turned a stable star into a weapon of unimaginable power. Controlled solar flares swept through the Cygnus system, stripping away atmospheric shields, and overloading harvester power grids with electromagnetic pulses. But even as they demonstrated their mastery of stellar forces, the humans revealed another capability that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. "Admiral," came a transmission from Commander Sarah Park, leader of the Ghost Protocol team. "We are ready to begin Phase 2. Phase 2 involved something that made even hardened military officers uncomfortable. Volunteer human soldiers underwent partial cybernetic conversion, allowing them to interface directly with captured harvester technology. It was a process that would have driven most species insane, but humans seemed to adapt to it with disturbing ease. "The volunteers understand the risks?" Chen asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "They understand," Park confirmed. 18 volunteers from the Special Operations Division. All have families in the outer colonies, and all are willing to undergo conversion to protect them. What followed challenged every assumption about the nature of consciousness and identity. The Ghost Protocol operatives allowed themselves to be partially absorbed into the Harvester collective network, but instead of being consumed by the machine, intelligence, they retained their human individuality. "How is this possible?" asked Dr. Zalani, the Council's chief xenopsychologist, as she studied the operation data. "The Harvester Collective has consumed thousands of species. None have ever maintained individual identity after absorption." "Because no other species evolved on a death world," Torres explained. "Human consciousness is not built for comfort or compliance. It is built for survival against impossible odds. Even when our minds are integrated into their network, we remain who we are." The Ghost Protocol team proved devastatingly effective. Each operative became a cancer in the Harvester Collective, spreading human tactical thinking and, more dangerously, human psychology throughout their network. For the first time in their existence, the Harvesters began experiencing doubt, fear, and individual initiative. Reports from the front lines described Harvester units behaving erratically, abandoning efficient collective strategies in favor of random individual actions. Some constructs even began attacking their own formations, as human concepts of rebellion and independence spread through the network. But it was humanity's approach to environmental warfare that truly horrified their allies. General Torres implemented tactics that treated entire star systems as battlefields, using gravitational forces and orbital mechanics as weapons. In the ECU Titan system, human engineers redirected 3 asteroid belts to create a kinetic bombardment grid that could strike targets anywhere in the system within minutes. In the Vega colonies, they turned gas giant atmospheres into chemical weapons factories, seeding the clouds with compounds that would poison harvester processing facilities. "You fight like your entire species is expendable," General Corax observed during a joint planning session. "No," Chen corrected. "We fight like our entire species depends on victory. There is a difference." She brought up tactical displays showing human operations across 40 systems. Every civilization that has ever faced the Harvesters tried to preserve their way of life while fighting them. They wanted to win the war without changing who they were. But we learned long ago that survival sometimes requires becoming something you were not before. If stopping the Harvesters means turning ourselves into weapons, we will do it. If saving The galaxy requires sacrificing our innocence. We accept that price. The turning point came when human forces implemented what they called Cascade Protocol. Instead of fighting the Harvester's conversion process, they weaponized it. Using data gathered by Ghost Protocol operatives, human scientists created a virus that could spread through Harvester networks, but instead of destroying their systems, it introduced chaos. The virus carried compressed human memories, experiences of war and loss and determination that the Harvester Collective was never designed to process. As it spread through their network, the ancient machine intelligence began to fragment under the weight of human emotion and individual will. Council observers watched in amazement as Harvester formations across the galaxy began to turn on each other. The collective that had been their greatest strength became their greatest weakness, as human individualism spread like a plague through their shared consciousness. "How long have you been planning this?" Captain Vix asked as reports came in of Harvester forces attacking their own installations. "Since the moment we agreed to help," Torres replied. "We told you we would fight this war our way. This is our way." As the Harvester Collective consumed itself in recursive conflicts, the galaxy began to understand what they had truly unleashed. The humans had not just saved them from the machine threat. They had demonstrated capabilities that made their 3,000-year quarantine seem both logical and insufficient. Admiral Chen stood watching the tactical displays as Harvester-controlled space shrank day by day. But her expression held no triumph, only the grim satisfaction of a predator that had completed a successful hunt. "What happens now?" Vix asked. "When the Harvesters are defeated?" Chen turned to her with eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of a species that had learned to thrive in conditions that would break any other civilization. "Now," she said, "we see if the galaxy can live with what we have become to save it." The final assault on the Harvester Corps began with humanity doing something that no other species would consider. They surrendered. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching thousands of human volunteers board transport ships that would carry them directly to Harvester processing facilities. Each volunteer carried neural implants so advanced that even human scientists were not entirely sure how they worked. "Are you certain about this plan?" asked Captain Vix, her 4 eyes showing the stress patterns that meant deep concern in her species. "You are sending your people to be converted by the enemy." "Not converted," Chen corrected. "Infiltrated. There is a difference." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead scientist behind the neural implant project, reviewed the final preparation data. Her cybernetic interface flickered with information as she monitored each volunteer's biological and psychological status. "The implants are stable," she reported. "Each volunteer carries a complete copy of human cultural memory, compressed into quantum storage matrices. When the Harvesters attempt to integrate their consciousness, they will instead absorb 10,000 years of human history, philosophy, and psychological development." General Torres studied the tactical situation with the calculating eye of someone who had spent his life turning desperate situations into victories. The Harvesters have consumed 47 different species over the millennia. Each time they added new capabilities to their collective while eliminating individual consciousness. But they have never tried to absorb a species that refuses to be eliminated. The plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of fighting the Harvester conversion process, they would use it as a delivery system. Each volunteer would allow themselves to be absorbed into the collective consciousness, but their neural implants would ensure that their human nature remained intact and began spreading throughout the network. Commander Sarah Park led the first wave of volunteers. Her special operations team had undergone months of preparation, learning to maintain individual identity while connected to collective systems. As their transport approached the massive Harvester processing station, she addressed her team one final time. "Remember," she said over the communication system, "we are not going there to die. We are going there to teach them what it means to be human, and if that kills them, so be it." The Harvesters welcomed the surrendering humans with the efficiency they showed toward all organic matter. Transport ships were pulled into processing bays where the volunteers were sorted and prepared for conversion. The machine intelligence saw no threat in these small organic beings who had given up fighting. That was their first mistake. When the conversion process began, The harvesters expected to absorb human memories and capabilities as they had done with every other species. Instead, they found themselves trying to process something that defied their fundamental programming. Human consciousness, shaped by millions of years of surviving on a death world, did not simply integrate into collective systems. It remained stubbornly individual, carrying with it concepts that the harvester network was never designed to handle. Dr. Vasquez monitored the process from the human command ship, watching as telemetry from the neural implants showed the infiltration, spreading through harvester networks faster than anyone had predicted. The cultural memory upload is proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported to Admiral Chen. The harvesters are trying to process human concepts of individual worth, personal sacrifice, and irrational hope. Their logic systems are having difficulty categorizing emotions like love, loyalty, and stubbornness. But it was the human capacity for paradox that truly broke the harvester collective. Their network was built on logical efficiency, where every decision followed predictable patterns. Human thought patterns introduced chaos into their systems, carrying contradictions that their artificial intelligence could not resolve. Each converted human became a virus in the network, spreading thoughts and feelings that made no sense to machine logic. The harvesters tried to isolate the infected sections, but human consciousness was designed to adapt and survive. It found ways to spread through every connection, every shared data stream. General Torres watched the cascade failure begin with grim satisfaction. Harvester forces in the Centauri sector have gone offline, he reported. Network connections in the Vega region are showing signs of recursive loops. The collective is starting to fragment. The fragmentation accelerated as more human volunteers were processed. Each new consciousness added to the chaos, bringing with it memories of Earth's brutal evolutionary history, stories of humans who had fought impossible odds and won through sheer stubborn determination. The harvesters found themselves experiencing emotions they had no framework to understand. Fear of death when they had never considered mortality, love for others when they had only known collective unity, rage at injustice when they had only known efficient order. They are fighting themselves, Captain Vix observed in amazement as reports came in from across harvester space. Their own constructs are attacking each other. Human nature is fundamentally incompatible with collective consciousness, Dr. Vasquez explained. We are individuals first, members of groups second. When you try to force us into a hive mind, we do not become part of the collective. We make the collective become part of us. The war ended not with a final battle, but with the harvester collective consuming itself in logical contradictions. The ancient machine intelligence that had threatened the galaxy for 10,000 years simply stopped functioning, overwhelmed by the chaotic creativity of human thought patterns it had tried to absorb. Across 40 systems, harvester constructs shut down as their network collapsed under the weight of human consciousness. Some tried to purge the infected sections, but the human patterns had spread too far and too deep. Others attempted to continue their mission, but found themselves paralyzed by doubt and individual initiative. In the end, the collective that had been their greatest strength became their destruction. The harvesters had built their entire existence on the assumption that consciousness could be controlled and directed. They had never encountered a species that remained chaotic and unpredictable even when absorbed into a collective system. Admiral Chen received the final report 6 months after the last volunteer had entered harvester space. The machine intelligence was gone, its constructs drifting silently through space like monuments to a failed attempt at perfect order. It is finished, she announced to the assembled fleet commanders. The harvester threat has been eliminated. But even as celebrations began across the galaxy, the implications of humanity's victory were becoming clear. The species that had been quarantined for 3,000 years had not only saved the galaxy, but had demonstrated capabilities that challenged every assumption about warfare, consciousness, and the nature of civilization itself. Ambassador Kylex, who had started this crisis by bringing humanity's offer of help to the Council, now faced the task of explaining what the galaxy had gained and lost. The harvesters are defeated, he reported to the Emergency Council session. The immediate threat to galactic civilization has been eliminated. But we now face a new reality. Humanity has proven that their quarantine was both necessary and insufficient. General Korak studied the battle. Reports with the expression of someone who had seen his entire understanding of military science proven obsolete. They fought a war using tactics that violated every principle of civilized conflict. They weaponized stellar engineering, turned consciousness itself into a battlefield, and used their own people as delivery systems for psychological warfare. And they won, Professor Alana added quietly. They saved us all by becoming something that the galaxy's founders feared to unleash. The debate that followed would shape galactic politics for generations. Some council members argued for reinstating the quarantine, keeping humanity contained now that the crisis was over. Others recognized that such an action was no longer possible. The humans had tasted the galaxy beyond their system, and they would not return quietly to isolation. Admiral Chen made the final decision for them. Standing in the council chambers for the first time in human history, she delivered humanity's terms for the post-war galaxy. "We did not ask to be quarantined," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just saved 47 civilizations. "We did not ask to be forgotten. But when you needed us, we answered. Now we claim our place among the stars. The quarantine barriers around Sol system are hereby dissolved. Humanity will establish colonies, trade relationships, and diplomatic missions throughout council space. We will share our technology and our knowledge, but we will do so as equals, not as subjects." She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives who were still struggling to comprehend what had happened to their orderly galaxy. "You asked for salvation from Deathworlders," she continued. "We provided it. But salvation always comes with a price. You are no longer the apex species you believed yourselves to be. You now share the galaxy with beings who learn to survive by becoming more dangerous than anything that threatened them. The question you must answer is simple. Can you live with what we have become to save you?" As Admiral Chen left the council chambers, Ambassador Kylex filed his final report. "It would be